The autumn wind howled through the barren cemetery, carrying with it the scent of sage and dust. Eliza stood before the fresh mound of earth, her black mourning dress whipping against her legs like raven wings. The last of the townsfolk were departing, their wagons creaking down the hill, leaving her alone with her grief and the fading light. She dropped to her knees beside the grave, uncaring of the cold dirt that stained her dress. Her husband of 5 years, Samuel Morrison, lay beneath that soil, the man who had brought her west from Missouri, who had built their ranch with his own hands, who had commanded respect from every soul in Cedar Ridge, gone in an instant, felled by what they called a hunting accident. Mrs. Morrison. The voice was quiet, barely audible above the wind. Eliza didn't turn. She recognized the voice. Jonah Winters, the farmhand who'd worked their land for the past 3 years. He'd been with Samuel that day, had brought the body back draped across his horse. "Everyone's gone," Jonah said, stepping closer. His shadow fell across the grave. "You shouldn't be out here alone. Storm's coming." "Let it come," Eliza whispered, her fingers clutching at the disturbed earth. Tears had long since dried on her cheeks, leaving tracks through the dust. She heard Jonah shift behind her, the creak of his leather boots. He'd always been a man of few words, keeping to his small cabin at the edge of their property, emerging only to work the fields and tend the livestock. Samuel had trusted him, said he was the best hand they'd ever hired, quiet, reliable, never asking for more than his wage. "I'll ready the wagon." Jonah offered. "No." Eliza's voice was sharper than she intended. She softened it. "I'll walk back when I'm ready." A long silence stretched between them. Then she heard him move away, his footsteps fading, but she knew he hadn't gone far, even now, with Samuel barely cold in the ground. Jonah was watching over her. It should have been a comfort, but something about it unsettled her. The truth was, the whole town was unsettled. Whispers had started the moment Jonah rode in with Samuel's body. A hunting accident. He'd said Samuel's rifle had misfired when he was climbing over a fallen log. But Samuel had been hunting these lands since he was a boy. He knew every root, every stone, and that rifle. He'd cleaned it religiously every Sunday after church. Some of the men had exchanged glances when Jonah gave his account to the sheriff. But what cause would a farmhand have to harm his employer? Jonah owned nothing but the clothes on his back and a Bible worn soft from reading. He'd shown nothing but loyalty these 3 years. Eliza rose slowly, her legs stiff from kneeling. The sun was setting, painting the sky the color of blood and ash. She needed to return to the ranch, to the 100 tasks that awaited her. The cattle wouldn't feed themselves. The fences wouldn't mend on their own. She was alone now, truly alone, with winter approaching fast. The walk back stretched before her like a lifetime. Each step took her further from Samuel, from the life they'd built together. He hadn't been a perfect husband. Lord knew he could be hard, demanding, quick to anger when the whiskey got hold of him. But he'd been hers, and she'd been his, and that had meant something in this unforgiving land. The ranch house came into view, lamplight already glowing in the windows. Jonah must have lit them. She paused at the gate, watching smoke curl from the chimney. How many evenings had she stood here, waiting for Samuel to return from the fields? Now there would be no more waiting. Inside, she found the kitchen swept clean, water drawn for washing, and a pot of stew warming on the stove. Jonah's work again. She should feel grateful, but exhaustion weighed too heavy for gratitude. Days blurred together. Eliza threw herself into the work, rising before dawn to milk the cows, mend harnesses, and check the fences. The ranch was too much for one person, but she refused to admit defeat. This land was all she had left of Samuel, and she'd die before she'd let it go to ruin. Jonah continued his work without being asked. She'd catch glimpses of him, repairing the barn door Samuel had been meaning to fix, bringing in wood for her fire, leaving fresh game on her doorstep. They barely spoke, just nods of acknowledgement when their paths crossed. But she felt his presence constantly, a shadow at the edge of her vision. The other ranchers came calling, hats in hand, offering to buy her out. No place for a woman alone, they said, eyes already calculating the value of her water rights, her fertile bottomland. Eliza sent them away with cold courtesy. She might be a widow, but she wasn't a fool. 2 weeks after the burial, the first winter storm hit. Eliza woke to find the woodpile covered in snow, ice forming on the water troughs. She dressed quickly, wrapping Samuel's old coat around her shoulders. It still smelled of tobacco and leather. The barn was warmer, filled with the breath of animals. She set about her chores mechanically, feed, water, muck out stalls. Her hands were raw and bleeding by the time she finished. As she stepped outside, the wind nearly knocked her down. Snow swirled so thick she couldn't see the house. Then Jonah was there, materializing from the white like a ghost. Without a word, he took her arm, guiding her through the blizzard. His grip was firm but gentle, and she found herself leaning into his strength. They stumbled into the house together, snow-covered and gasping. "Thank you," she managed through chattering teeth. Jonah nodded, already turning to go. "Wait." The word escaped before she could stop it. "The storm. You can't make it to your cabin." He paused at the door. "I'll be fine, Mrs. Morrison." "Eliza," she said quietly. "Just Eliza." Something flickered in his dark eyes. "I'll be fine, Eliza." But he wasn't at the door anymore. He was building up the fire, checking the windows for drafts. She watched him work, really seeing him for perhaps the first time. He was younger than she'd thought, maybe 30 to her 25, weathered by sun and wind, but strong. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, and she found herself studying them, scarred, capable hands that had held her husband's body, that now tended her fire. "Why do you stay?" she asked suddenly. Jonah stilled. "Someone needs to look after the place. That's not what I meant." He turned to face her then, and she saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Pain, old and deep, longing, carefully controlled, and something else, something that made her take a step back. "I should go," he said. "The storm. I know every inch of this land. I'll find my way." And he was gone, leaving her alone with the wind and her racing heart. She didn't see him for 2 days. The storm raged, piling snow against the doors, howling like a wounded animal. Eliza rationed her wood, melted snow for water, and tried not to think about Jonah in his drafty cabin. On the 3rd morning, she woke to stillness. The storm had passed. She found him in the barn, forking hay to the cattle as if nothing had happened. Relief flooded through her, followed quickly by anger. "You fool," she said. "You could have died. But I didn't." His voice was calm, steady. "Why do you care so little for your life?" He set down the pitchfork, turning to face her fully. "Why do you care so much?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Eliza felt heat rise to her cheeks. "You work for me. I'm responsible for your welfare. Is that all? What else could there be?" Jonah moved closer, and she caught his scent, leather and wood smoke and something wild. "You tell me." Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was wrong. All wrong. Samuel barely cold. The town already watching her every move. She was a widow, meant to mourn, meant to be invisible. And Jonah, what did she even know about him? 3 years he'd worked their land, and he remained a mystery. "I should go," she whispered, but didn't move. Yes, he agreed, but he didn't step back. The barn felt too small, the air too thick. Eliza forced herself to turn, to walk steadily back to the house, but she felt his eyes on her the whole way. And that night, she dreamed of scarred hands and dark eyes and woke gasping, ashamed. Weeks passed, the snow melted and froze and melted again. Eliza learned the brutal arithmetic of survival, how much wood to burn, how much food to store, how much strength she had left at the end of each day. Always. Jonah was there, silent and steady. They developed a rhythm, working in parallel, rarely speaking but always aware of each other. Then came the evening she broke. She'd been visiting Samuel's grave, bringing the first wild flowers of spring. The sun was setting as she knelt beside the headstone, and suddenly the weight of everything crashed over her. The loneliness, the exhaustion, the terrible burden of the ranch. She sobbed until her ribs ached, until she had no tears left, until darkness fell around her like a blanket. She didn't hear Jonah approach, but suddenly he was there, kneeling beside her. He didn't speak, just placed his hand on her shoulder. The warmth of it, the simple human contact, undid her completely. She turned into him, burying her face against his chest, and he held her while she shook. When the storm passed, she pulled back, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, don't." His voice was rough. "Don't apologize." They were so close she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the scar that ran through his left eyebrow. Her hand rose of its own accord, fingers nearly touching that scar. "Eliza." Her name on his lips was a warning and a plea. She should have moved away, should have remembered propriety, mourning the watching eyes of the town. Instead, she stayed frozen as he leaned closer, his breath warm against her skin. "I loved you first, you know." The words hit her like cold water. She jerked back, staring at him. "What?" Jonah's face was raw with emotion she'd never seen before. "Before you married him, before he even knew your name, I loved you first." Eliza scrambled to her feet, heart pounding. You can't." 3 years, he said, rising slowly. 3 years I've worked this land, watched you tend your garden, heard you singing in the kitchen. 3 years of being invisible while you looked at him. "Stop!" The word came out as a whisper. "I never would have said anything, would have taken it to my grave. But now, he's dead." The words tore from her throat. "My husband is dead, and you—" She couldn't finish, couldn't form the terrible suspicion into words. Jonah's face went very still. "You think I killed him? Did you?" The question hung between them like a blade. Jonah studied her for a long moment, and she saw something die in his eyes. "No," he said quietly. "Though God help me, there were times I wanted to." Then he turned and walked away, leaving her alone with the dead. The days after Jonah's confession stretched taut as fence wire. Eliza moved through her chores like a ghost, avoiding the barn when she knew he'd be there, taking her meals alone. But the ranch demanded cooperation. Fences didn't mend themselves, and the spring calving had begun. She found herself watching him when she thought he wasn't looking, the way he gentled the skittish mare, speaking low words she couldn't hear, the patience in his hands as he worked leather, mending harnesses. He'd gone back to being invisible, or trying to, but now she saw him everywhere. Memories of Samuel crept in at unexpected moments. His laugh, rare but genuine. The way he'd courted her back in Missouri, bringing her father prime tobacco, her mother's store-bought ribbons. He'd been handsome then, full of dreams about heading west, making something of himself. She'd been 17 and desperate to escape the confines of her father's small farm, but marriage had changed him. Or maybe the land had. Samuel grew harder with each failed harvest, each dead calf, each neighbor who gave up and headed back east. He'd started drinking after the second year, when drought killed half their wheat, never violent, but distant, cold. Some nights he'd sit on the porch with his whiskey, staring at the horizon like he was looking for something he'd lost. "You're too soft," he'd tell her when she'd cry over a stillborn foal or a hen taken by coyotes. "This land'll eat you alive if you're soft." Maybe he'd been right, but now, facing the land alone, she wondered if hardness was just another kind of dying. The storm came sudden and fierce, unusual for late spring. Eliza woke to thunder that shook the house, lightning turning night to day in violent flashes. Rain hammered the roof like bullets. She dressed quickly, knowing what this meant. The animals would panic. The new calves were vulnerable. She fought her way to the barn, wind tearing at her clothes. Inside, chaos. The milk cow bellowed, eyes rolling white. The horses screamed and kicked at their stalls, and somewhere in the dark, a calf's terrified bleating. "Easy, easy now." She tried to soothe the animals, but her voice was lost in the storm's fury. Then the barn door flew open, and Jonah was there, soaked through but steady. Without a word, he moved to the horses, his presence calming them instantly. Eliza found the lost calf wedged behind the feed bins and gathered it in her arms. They worked in tandem, settling the animals, checking for injuries. The storm raged on, and somewhere in the madness, a support beam cracked. Eliza looked up just as it started to fall. Jonah moved faster than thought, slamming into her, driving them both to the ground as the beam crashed where she'd been standing. For a moment, they lay tangled in the straw, his body shielding hers, his heart hammering against her back. "Are you hurt?" His breath was hot against her ear. "No, She turned in his arms, and suddenly they were face to face, inches apart. Rain drummed on the roof. Lightning illuminated his features, the concern in his eyes, the water dripping from his hair. Time stopped. The world narrowed to this moment, this breath, this unbearable closeness. Eliza's hand rose to his cheek without her permission, feeling the roughness of stubble, the warmth of skin. Eliza. Her name was a prayer on his lips. She should have pulled away. Instead, she drew him closer. Their lips met, tentative at first, then desperate. He tasted of rain and something wild, something that had been caged too long. Her fingers tangled in his wet hair as he pulled her against him. And for a moment, she forgot everything. Samuel, propriety, the watching world. There was only this, the storm, the dark, and Jonah's mouth on hers. Reality crashed back like cold water. She broke away, scrambling backward. I can't. Jonah stayed where he was, breathing hard. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "No?" She pressed her fingers to her lips, still feeling the burn of his kiss. "It's not, we just can't." They stared at each other across the scattered straw. Then Eliza fled, running through the rain to the house, slamming the door behind her. She leaned against it, gasping, while her heart tried to tear its way out of her chest. Sleep didn't come that night. She lay in the bed she'd shared with Samuel, staring at the ceiling, reliving every second. The weight of Jonah's body, the hunger in his kiss, the way her own body had responded, immediate and unmistakable. Shame flooded through her, followed by anger. At Jonah for his confession, his patience, his impossible presence. At herself for wanting what she couldn't have. At Samuel for dying and leaving her in this position. Even at God, for making the world so hard and hearts so weak. Morning brought a fragile truce. The storm had passed, leaving damage in its wake. Without discussion, she and Jonah worked to repair what could be saved. He was careful to keep distance between them, never touching, barely meeting her eyes. But awareness crackled like electricity in the air. That evening, she found him in his cabin, packing. "What are you doing?" He didn't look up. "What I should have done weeks ago. Leaving." Panic seized her throat. "You can't. The ranch. I can't manage alone. You'll hire someone else. Jonah, please." She stepped into the small space, noting the Spartan furnishings, the Bible on the narrow bed. "Last night we made a mistake, but that doesn't mean..." "Doesn't mean what?" He turned to face her, eyes blazing. "That I should stay here, watching you every day, wanting what I can't have. That we should pretend I don't love you, that you don't feel something too. Don't lie to me, Eliza, not after last night." She wrapped her arms around herself. "What I feel doesn't matter. Samuel's been gone barely 2 months. The whole town already whispers about the widow and her farmhand. If you stay, if we..." She couldn't finish. "So I should go." The finality in his voice made her chest tight. I don't know anything anymore." Jonah moved closer, careful not to touch her. "Tell me what you want. Not what the town wants, not what's proper. What do you want?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Eliza closed her eyes, seeing Samuel's face, feeling Jonah's kiss. Torn between duty and desire, past and possibility. "I want my husband back," she whispered. I want to not be alone. I want to stop feeling guilty for being glad you're here. I want impossible things. When she opened her eyes, Jonah's expression had softened. I know about wanting impossible things. They stood there, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. Then footsteps on the path broke the spell. Eliza stepped back quickly as Tom Garrett, the neighboring rancher, appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Morrison. His eyes flicked between them, taking in their proximity, her presence in Jonah's cabin. Excuse the intrusion. Saw the storm damage. Thought you might need help. That's kind of you, Mr. Garrett. Eliza's voice came out steady, though her cheeks burned. We've managed well enough. Have you now? His gaze lingered on Jonah, who'd gone very still. Well, the offer stands. Wouldn't want you struggling out here. Not proper. A woman alone. The implication hung heavy. After he left, Eliza sank onto the cabin's single chair. It's starting, she said. The talk, the judgment. Let them talk. She looked up at him, surprised by the steel in his voice. Easy for you to say. You could leave tomorrow, find work anywhere. This is all I have. Jonah knelt before her, still careful not to touch. Then we're careful. I'll sleep in the barn, take my meals there. Only speak to you about ranch business, and only when others might see. We give them nothing to talk about. And when we're alone, I stay away from you, far away. She wanted to protest, to say she didn't want him far away. But he was right. This was the only way. You'll stay then? Until you tell me to go. Eliza stood, smoothing her skirts. The brown hen stopped laying. Might be she's egg-bound. Jonah rose too, understanding. They were drawing the lines, building the walls. I'll check on her. She left without looking back, though she felt his eyes follow her all the way to the house. The new arrangement held for a week. They moved around each other like dancers who couldn't touch, maintaining careful distance. Jonah took his meals in the barn, only entering the house when she was gone. They communicated through notes left on the fence post. Creek fence needs mending. Ordered feed from Garrett's store. Thank you. But at night, Eliza lay wakeful, imagining she could hear him moving in the barn below her window. Sometimes she'd stand at the glass, watching his shadow pass by lamplight, fighting the urge to go to him. One evening, she found a wildflower on her doorstep, a prairie rose, pink and perfect. No note, but she knew. She pressed it between the pages of her Bible, next to the verse about strength and courage. The careful distance might have worked, if not for what came next. Eliza woke to the sound of horses, too many for visitors. She dressed quickly, heart pounding. Through her window, she saw them, 5 men from town, including Tom Garrett and Sheriff Walsh. She met them on the porch, chin high. Gentlemen, early for a social call. This ain't social, Mrs. Morrison. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. There's been talk about your situation here. My situation? Garrett stepped forward. A young widow, alone with a male farmhand. It ain't proper. Ain't safe, neither. I see. Eliza's voice could have frozen water. And what business is it of yours? The business of decent folk looking out for one of their own. Garrett said, Your husband was a good man. He wouldn't want you putting yourself at risk. My husband is dead. The words came out sharp as glass. And I'll manage my ranch as I see fit. Will you now? Garrett's eyes narrowed. Even if it means losing custom at the store, finding no hands at harvest time, being unwelcome at church. The threats were plain. Eliza felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. These men controlled the town, the supplies, the very social fabric that made survival possible out here. What do you want? Simple enough, the sheriff said. The hand goes, or you take on a proper chaperone. The widow Martinez in town needs a place. You could share the house, make it all respectable-like. Widow Martinez, who gossiped like breathing and reported everything to her son. The deputy, Eliza would have no privacy, no peace. But the alternative, I need time to consider. Course you do. Garrett tipped his hat. smiling like he'd already won. "We'll be back end of the week for your answer." They rode off in a cloud of dust, leaving Eliza shaking on the porch. She didn't see Jonah approach until he spoke. "I'll go." She whirled to face him. "You were listening?" "Hard not to. They meant me to hear." His face was carved from stone. "It's the only way. You know it is." "No." The word erupted from somewhere deep. "I won't be bullied by small-minded men who can destroy you." Jonah stepped closer, and she saw the anguish he'd been hiding. "They'll make your life hell, Eliza. Cut you off from everything. You'll lose the ranch, your good name, everything." "Maybe I don't care." "You have to care. This land is all you have left of him." The mention of Samuel was like cold water. Eliza stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. "Don't. He's gone, but his memory isn't. You think he'd want you ruined for the sake of a farmhand? You're not just—" She stopped, but too late. "Not just what?" Jonah moved closer, hope and pain warring in his eyes. "Say it, Eliza. Tell me what I am to you." She stood at the precipice, knowing that speaking the truth would change everything. The morning sun painted the land gold, and somewhere a meadowlark sang. "Such beauty, such cruelty in the world. You're the reason I can breathe," she whispered. "You're the reason I get up each morning instead of lying down next to Samuel's grave. You're impossible and necessary and—" He kissed her, not like the desperate collision in the barn, but slow and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were trembling. "I'll go," he said against her lips. "But not because they tell me to, because you deserve better than shadows and shame. When your morning's done, when the talk dies down, if you still want me." "How long?" Her fingers clutched his shirt. "How long must I wait?" "As long as it takes for you to choose me free and clear, without guilt or fear." He stepped back, and the loss of him was like losing gravity. Eliza watched him walk away, knowing he was right and hating him for it, hating herself more for the relief that warred with despair in her chest. That night, she dreamed of Samuel. He stood at the foot of their bed, looking at her with sad eyes. "You always were too soft," he said, and she woke crying, unsure who or what she mourned. The end of the week came too soon. Eliza stood on her porch, watching the dust cloud that announced her visitor's return. She'd made her decision, though it sat like stones in her stomach. Mrs. Morrison. Sheriff Walsh touched his hat brim. "You've had time to think on our proposal." "I have." She kept her voice steady. "Mr. Winters will remain in my employ. However, I'll welcome Mrs. Martinez as a boarder, if she's willing." Garrett's face darkened. "The hand stays? He's the best worker I've had. The ranch would fail without him." She met each man's gaze. "Unless you gentlemen are offering to work my fields and tend my stock?" Silence. Then the sheriff cleared his throat. "And you'll take in the widow Martinez? If she agrees to respect this as my home, yes." It wasn't the complete capitulation they'd wanted, but it was enough. The men exchanged glances, and Garrett finally nodded. "We'll send her along tomorrow." After they left, Eliza sagged against the doorframe. She'd bought time. Nothing more. Maria Martinez was a hawk-eyed woman who'd report every glance, every word between her and Jonah. But at least he could stay. She found him in the barn, mending harnesses. "You heard?" He nodded without looking up. "The widow Martinez. Clever. It was that or lose you entirely." His hand stilled on the leather. "Might have been easier if you had." Maria Martinez arrived the next afternoon with 2 trunks and a disposition sour as pickle brine. She was a small, sharp woman of 60, dressed in permanent mourning for a husband dead these 20 years. "I'll need the front bedroom," she announced, surveying the house like a general planning a campaign. "My arthritis. You understand. Can't be climbing stairs. You'll take the attic room." Eliza bit her tongue. The front bedroom had been hers and Samuel's, but arguing would only feed the gossip. "Of course, Mrs. Martinez. And that farmhand?" Maria's eyes glinted. "He takes meals in the barn?" When he chooses to. Best he choose to regular like. Wouldn't want people talking. People were already talking. Eliza thought bitterly. That's why you're here. But she smiled and showed Maria to her room, then spent the evening moving her own things to the narrow attic space. The new arrangement was torture by inches. Maria watched everything with her raptor eyes, cataloging each interaction. Jonah adapted by becoming nearly invisible, speaking to Eliza only when absolutely necessary, and always with Maria in sight. Fence in the north pasture needs fixing, he'd report, eyes on the ground. See to it then. She'd reply, voice carefully neutral, and Maria would nod approvingly, missing or choosing to miss, the way Eliza's hands trembled, the tension that sang between them like a plucked wire. Evenings were the worst. Maria commandeered the parlor, expecting Eliza to sit with her, doing needlework and listening to gossip from town. That Collins girl, running off with the traveling salesman. Her poor mother. Maria's needle flashed in the lamplight. Course, blood will tell. Her grandmother was no better than she should be. Eliza made non-committal sounds, her own needle moving mechanically. Through the window, she could see light in the barn where Jonah worked late, avoiding the house, avoiding her. You're blessed, having lost your husband proper-like, Maria continued. Nothing worse than a woman whose man abandons her. Least you've got your dignity. Yes, Eliza murmured. Blessed. Later, lying in her narrow attic bed, she'd press her face into the pillow and scream silently, blessed, as if grief was something to be grateful for, as if loneliness was dignity. Spring melted into summer. The ranch prospered under Jonah's careful management and Eliza's hard work. The calves grew fat. The wheat stood tall. To anyone watching, and Maria was always watching, they were a model of propriety. Employer and employee. Nothing more. But there were moments. A brush of fingers when he handed her the egg basket. A shared glance when Maria's snoring drifted from the front bedroom. Once, Eliza found a book of poetry left on the fence post, a pressed wildflower marking a verse about endurance. She kept the book under her pillow, reading by candlelight when sleep wouldn't come. The breaking point came in August. Eliza had spent the day canning peaches in the sweltering kitchen, Maria supervising and criticizing every move. By evening, she was exhausted, sticky with sweat and peach juice, desperate for air. I'm walking to the creek, she announced. Maria looked up sharply. At this hour? Alone? It's my land. I'll walk where I please. Decent women don't wander after dark. Something in Eliza snapped. Then perhaps I'm not a decent woman. She left Maria sputtering and escaped into the cooling evening. The path to the creek was so familiar she could walk it blind. Moonlight turned the water to silver, and she sank onto the bank with relief. She'd been there perhaps 10 minutes when she heard footsteps. Her heart leaped, then sank when she recognized the shape approaching. You shouldn't be here, she said as Jonah emerged from the shadows. Neither should you. He stopped several feet away, hands in his pockets. Maria will notice. Let her. Eliza pulled off her boots, dipping her feet in the cool water. I'm tired of being watched, tired of pretending. Don't. His voice was rough. We agreed. You agreed. You decided. Everyone decides except me. She stood, facing him in the moonlight. Do you know what she told me yesterday? That I'm lucky my husband died. Lucky, because at least I'm not abandoned. Eliza, but I am abandoned, aren't I? You're right there, every day, and might as well be 1,000 miles away. He moved then, closing the distance but not touching. You think this is easy for me? You think I don't lie awake knowing you're just overhead, that I don't have to leave the room when you laugh because it makes me want things I can't have? Then have them. The words hung between them like a challenge. Stop being noble. Stop deciding what's best for me. Just, what? Take you here by the creek like you're some saloon girl? Ruin what reputation you have left? His control finally cracked. I love you too much for that. The word landed like a blow. Love. He'd said it before, but not like this. not with his voice breaking, his hands shaking. "Then what do we do?" she whispered. "We endure, we wait, we—" A scream split the night. Both turned toward the house, where orange light flickered in the windows. "Fire!" They ran. The kitchen was ablaze, flames already licking at the walls. Maria stood in the yard, shrieking about her trunks, her belongings. Jonah didn't hesitate. He plunged into the house while Eliza ran for the well, hauling bucket after bucket. The heat was tremendous, smoke filling the air. She couldn't see Jonah, couldn't hear anything but the roar of flames. Then he was stumbling out, coughing, carrying Maria's trunks. Behind him, the kitchen ceiling collapsed. "Let it go!" Eliza shouted, grabbing his arm. "Let it burn!" They retreated to safe distance, watching the fire consume the kitchen, half the parlor, without enough water or hands to fight it. They could only ensure it didn't spread to the barn. By dawn, the house stood like a broken tooth, half gone, the rest smoke-blackened but standing. Maria sat on her rescued trunks, weeping dramatically. "My fault," she wailed. "You left the stove burning? Oh, what'll people say?" People said plenty. Within hours, neighbors arrived to gawk and offer help. Tom Garrett surveyed the damage with satisfaction poorly disguised as sympathy. "Terrible loss. Course, a woman alone can't manage rebuilding. Best to sell now. Cut your losses." "I'm not alone," Eliza said quietly. "And I'm not selling." Garrett's eyes flicked to Jonah, who was sorting through the salvageable remains. "No, I suppose you're not alone." The implication was clear, but Eliza was past caring. Her house lay in ruins. Maria was already packing to return to town, full of stories about the fire and the improprieties she'd witnessed. "Let them talk," Eliza murmured after Garrett left. Jonah looked up from the rubble. His face was streaked with soot, his shirt singed. "They'll do more than talk now." He was right, over the following days. As they worked to shore up what remained of the house, the isolation deepened. No one came to help rebuild. The general store suddenly had no credit for the Morrison Ranch. Even the traveling preacher bypassed their gate. But something had shifted that night by the creek, crystallized in the fire. The pretense was gone. Jonah moved his few possessions into the smokehouse, close enough to guard against trouble. They took meals together in the ruined kitchen, cooking over an open fire. "We could leave," he said one evening. "Go somewhere nobody knows us. California, maybe Oregon." Eliza looked around the ranch, Samuel's ranch, her ranch. "This is my home. Even if staying means fighting the whole town? Especially then." He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen in months. "You're sure? I'm tired of caring what they think, tired of apologizing for surviving." She met his eyes across the fire. "Stay, Jonah, not in the smokehouse. Stay with me." The words hung in the smoky air. He stood slowly, came around the fire. When he knelt before her, she saw everything in his face: love, fear, hope warring for dominance. "If I stay tonight, I stay forever. You understand that?" She touched his face, thumb tracing the scar through his eyebrow. "I understand." He caught her hand, pressed it to his lips. "They'll make our lives hell. Let them try." That night, with stars visible through the holes in the roof, Eliza led Jonah to the one bedroom that remained intact. They stood at the threshold, both understanding the weight of crossing it. "Are you sure?" he asked one last time. Instead of answering, she drew him inside and closed the door on the watching world. Morning found them tangled together, sunlight streaming through the cracked window. Eliza woke first, studying Jonah's face in sleep. Younger looking without the weight of careful distance. She traced the lines sun and wind had carved, memorizing each one. His eyes opened, immediately alert. Regrets? None. She meant it. "You?" He pulled her closer. "Only that I waited so long." They rose reluctantly, knowing the world waited with its judgment. But for now, in the morning light, they were just two people who'd chosen each other over everything else. At breakfast, working side by side to prepare a simple meal. Eliza felt something she hadn't experienced since before Samuel's death. Not happiness exactly. Too much had been lost for that. But possibility. The chance to build something new from the ashes. "What do we do now?" she asked. Jonah considered. "We rebuild. We work the land. We face whatever comes." He took her hand. "Together. Together," she echoed, and the word felt like a promise. Outside, a rider approached, the first of many challenges to come. But inside the broken house, two people who had loved in silence finally spoke the same language. And that was enough to begin. The night wrapped around them like a covenant. In the broken house, with stars peering through gaps in the roof, Eliza and Jonah came together with the desperate hunger of those who'd waited too long. His hands, roughened by years of labor, trembled as they traced her face, her shoulders, the curve of her waist. She'd imagined this moment in guilty dreams, but reality overwhelmed her. The solid warmth of him, the way he whispered her name like a prayer. "I've wanted this so long," he breathed against her neck. "Wanted you." She pulled him closer, past words, past thought. There was only sensation, the scratch of his beard, the careful strength in his arms, the way their bodies found a rhythm ancient as the land itself. When he kissed her, she tasted salt and longing. When she arched beneath him, he groaned like a man dying of thirst who'd found water. Afterward, they lay entwined in the narrow bed, listening to coyotes calling in the distance. Eliza traced patterns on his chest, marveling at the freedom to touch him. "What are you thinking?" Jonah asked, voice rough with satisfaction. "That I should feel guilty." She pressed her lips to his shoulder. "But I don't. Is that wicked of me?" "If it is, we're wicked together." They made love again as dawn approached. Slower this time, learning each other's geography. Eliza discovered the scar on his ribs from a horse's kick, the sensitive spot where his neck met his shoulder. He mapped her with hands and mouth until she cried out, careless of who might hear. When sunlight finally forced them from bed, the world felt remade. They moved around each other differently now, no careful distance, no avoided glances. Jonah's hand lingered on her waist as he passed. She straightened his collar with proprietary care. "We should work on the house," she said over breakfast. "We should." But neither moved, content to sit close, shoulders touching. The rider they'd spotted approached mid-morning, Reverend Mills, his face grave beneath his wide-brimmed hat. "Mrs. Morrison." He dismounted, eyes taking in the ruined house, their proximity. "I heard about the fire. Come to offer spiritual comfort." "That's kind of you, Reverend." Eliza rose, acutely aware of her disheveled appearance, the marks Jonah's mouth had left on her neck. "Perhaps we might speak privately. Whatever you have to say can be said in front of Mr. Winters." The Reverend's mouth tightened. "Very well. There's talk in town, unseemly talk about your situation here. Our situation is that we're rebuilding after a fire. That's not all you're building, from what I hear." His eyes burned with righteous fury. "Sin, Mrs. Morrison. Fornication. Your husband not 4 months in the ground. Enough." Jonah stepped forward, and Eliza saw the minister flinch. "You've said your piece. The Lord's piece. You mean, thou shalt not commit adultery." "She's a widow," Jonah said quietly. "Where's the adultery in that?" "The adultery is in her heart, taking another man so soon. In your heart, coveting what wasn't yours." The Reverend pointed at them. "You'll burn for this, both of you." "We've already burned," Eliza said. "Look around you. We're still standing." Mills left with dire warnings about their immortal souls. Eliza sank onto the porch steps, suddenly exhausted. "He's not wrong," she said. "By their standards, we're damned." Jonah sat beside her, not touching. "Do you believe that?" She thought of Samuel, of her marriage vows, of the rules that govern decent women. Then she thought of the night just past, the rightness of being in Jonah's arms. "I believe we make our own salvation." He took her hand then, and they sat watching the sun climb higher over their damaged kingdom. The shunning began in earnest after Mills's visit. No one would sell them supplies. The bank called in a loan Samuel had taken, demanding immediate payment. Even the Mexican laborers, who usually helped with harvest, refused to come. "We'll manage," Jonah insisted. But Eliza saw the worry in his eyes. The wheat needed cutting soon. More than 2 people could handle alone. They worked from dawn to past dusk, racing time and weather. Eliza's hands blistered and bled. Her back screamed. But she wouldn't stop. Wouldn't prove them right about a woman's weakness. One evening, collapsed in the shade, she noticed Jonah watching her with a strange expression. "What? You're magnificent." He brushed sweaty hair from her face. "I've never known anyone like you. Stubborn, you mean. Strong, brave, beautiful." She laughed, gesturing at her sweat-stained dress, her sunburned skin. "Oh yes, a real beauty." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, until she forgot her exhaustion. They made love there in the wheat field, hidden by the tall stalks, with the setting sun painting everything gold. It felt like defiance, like worship, like staking their claim on the land itself. But even their combined strength wasn't enough. The wheat began to over-ripen, threatening the year's profit. Without help, they'd lose everything. Then one morning, 3 wagons appeared on the horizon. Eliza grabbed the rifle, expecting trouble. But as they drew closer, she recognized the drivers, the Johansson family from 2 valleys over, the elderly Prescott brothers, and most surprising, Maria Martinez. "Heard you needed hands for harvest," Eric Johansson called out. His wife Clara smiled from beside him, their children peering from the wagon bed. "But how?" Eliza lowered the rifle. Stunned. "Maria told us." Clara said, "About the fire, the shunning. Ain't Christian what they're doing." Maria climbed down from her wagon, dignity intact despite the rough ride. "I may be a gossip, but I know right from wrong. You saved my worthless trunks from that fire. Least I can do is speak truth about it." Eliza felt tears threaten. "We can't pay much." "Didn't ask for pay." Old Pete Prescott spat tobacco juice. "Just neighbors helping neighbors. Way it should be." With the extra hands, they saved the harvest. The work was still brutal, but shared labor made it bearable. In the evenings, they gathered for simple meals, and Eliza felt something she'd thought lost forever: community. Clara Johansson pulled her aside one evening. "I was widowed young too, remarried within the year." She glanced at Jonah, who was teaching the Johansson boys to whittle. "Folk talked, but my Eric's been a good husband these 20 years. Don't let them shame you for choosing happiness." Maria was blunter. "That man loves you fierce. Any fool can see it. You're Samuel." She paused, choosing words carefully. "He was respected, but did he ever look at you like you hung the moon?" Eliza thought of Samuel's distant eyes, his cold bed those last months. "No. Then you've upgraded, I'd say." The harvest crew left with promises to return for threshing. Eliza and Jonah stood in the swept barn, surveying their saved crop. "We did it," she breathed. "You did it." He pulled her against him. "You're the strongest person I know." "I had help." She turned in his arms. "I had you." That night, they celebrated privately, christening every room of the broken house with their joy. Jonah loved her with focused intensity, as if trying to make up for all the silent years. Eliza responded with equal fervor. No shame left in her, only gratitude for this second chance at life. "Marry me," Jonah said as they lay catching their breath. She stilled. "What?" "Marry me. Make it proper in their eyes. If that matters, make it real in ours." "Jonah, I know it's too soon by their count, but we've already waited years." He rolled to face her. "Unless you don't want—" She silenced him with a kiss. "Yes." "Yes?" "Yes, I'll marry you. Tomorrow if possible. Yesterday if we could." He laughed, the sound filling the broken house with something better than walls. Hope. But morning brought new challenges. A letter arrived, delivered by a nervous boy who wouldn't meet their eyes. Official letterhead, the bank's seal. Foreclosure notice. They had 30 days to pay Samuel's loan in full or lose the ranch. "How much?" Jonah asked. Eliza read the figure, her heart sinking. "More than the harvest will bring, more than we can raise. There has to be a way." "There is." Tom Garrett's voice came from the doorway. Neither had heard him approach. "Afternoon, Mrs. Morrison. Winners. State your business," Jonah said coldly. Garrett smiled. "I'm here to help. Heard about your financial troubles. Willing to buy the ranch at a fair price." "More than fair, considering." "Considering what?" Eliza demanded. "Considering your reputation. Not many buyers for a property tainted by scandal." He let that sink in. "But I'm a forgiving man. Sign over the deed, and I'll pay enough to clear the debt and set you up somewhere far from here." "No. Think carefully. Without my offer, you lose everything and get nothing." "The answer is no." Garrett's face darkened. "You'd rather see it go to auction? Watch strangers tear down what your husband built?" "My husband is dead," Eliza said evenly. "This is my land now, mine and Jonah's. We'll find another way. No bank will extend credit to a fallen woman and her farmhand lover." Jonah stepped forward. "Get out. I'm trying to help. Get out before I throw you out." Garrett left with threats about their stubbornness, their doom. Eliza sank into a chair, the weight of it all crushing down. "We'll think of something." Jonah insisted. But what? They had no friends with money, no assets beyond the land itself. For the first time since choosing each other, Eliza wondered if love was enough against the world's cruelty. That night, unable to sleep, she walked to Samuel's grave. The headstone stood solid in the moonlight, his name carved deep. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for failing to save your ranch, for not mourning you properly, for falling in love with another man." She touched the cold stone. "But I'm not sorry for choosing life over living death. I hope wherever you are, you understand that." Wind rustled the grass, and for a moment, she imagined Samuel's voice. "You always were too soft, maybe," she said to the night, "but I'm still here." When she returned to the house, Jonah was awake, waiting. Couldn't sleep either. She crawled into bed beside him. "Tell me it'll be all right. It'll be all right." "Liar." "Yes." He held her close. "But I'll lie to you as often as you need." They clung to each other in the darkness, two souls against a hostile world. Their love the only shelter they had left. Dawn came harsh and bright, illuminating the truth Eliza had been trying to avoid. She stood at the kitchen table, spreading out their financial papers like a general surveying a losing battle. Every calculation led to the same conclusion. They couldn't raise enough money in 30 days. "There might be a way," Jonah said quietly from the doorway. She looked up, seeing him dressed in his good shirt, the one he wore to town. "What are you thinking?" "I could go to the mines. Colorado. Men make fortunes there." "No." The word came out sharper than intended. "The mines kill more men than they make rich. We need money. Eliza, we need you alive." She crossed to him, gripping his shoulders. "Promise me you won't even consider it." He was quiet too long. "What else can we do? Watch them take everything. If we lose the ranch, we lose it together. I won't have you dying in some mountain trying to save it." They stared at each other, the weight of their situation pressing down. Finally, Jonah nodded. "Together then." But Eliza saw the defeat in his eyes, and it terrified her more than any threat. She made her decision that afternoon. While Jonah worked the fields, she packed a small bag and saddled her mare. The ride to town took 2 hours, each mile harder than the last. By the time she reached the small boarding house on the edge of Cedar Ridge, her hands were shaking. Mrs. Catherine Belmore answered the door herself, an elegant woman in her 40s who ran the most discreet establishment between Denver and San Francisco. They'd met once at a church social, before Catherine's profession became known and she was quietly excluded from polite society. "Mrs. Morrison." Catherine's painted lips curved in surprise. "This is unexpected." "I need work," Eliza said without preamble. "Quickly. Work that pays well." Catherine's eyes sharpened. taking in Eliza's worn dress, her desperate expression. "Come inside." The parlor was tastefully appointed, nothing to suggest the business conducted upstairs. Catherine poured tea with steady hands. "You know what kind of work I offer." "I know." Eliza's voice barely trembled. "I need $500 in 30 days, or I lose everything." "That's a considerable sum. Can it be done?" Catherine studied her. "You're a beautiful woman. Tragic story. Young widow, cruel world. Men pay extra for that. But are you certain this isn't a path you can walk back from?" Eliza thought of Jonah, of the ranch, of the life they were building. "I'm certain." "No, you're desperate. There's a difference." Catherine leaned forward. "What about your man, the farmhand everyone's gossiping about?" Heat flooded Eliza's cheeks. "He doesn't need to know. Secrets like this don't keep in a small town. Then I'll go somewhere else." "Denver. And leave him?" "My dear, if you're doing this for love, destroying that love in the process rather defeats the purpose." Eliza's composure finally cracked. "Then what do I do? How do I save us?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then she opened a drawer, withdrawing a leather pouch. "There's another way, but it requires courage of a different sort. Anything. I have a proposition for you. Not what you're thinking. I don't poach desperate women for my house. Bad for business and worse for the soul." She pushed the pouch across the table. "There's $200 there, a loan. I can't repay." "You can, by doing me a service. I have documents that need to reach a lawyer in San Francisco. Delicate documents regarding certain prominent men in this territory, men who'd rather those papers disappear." Eliza understood immediately. "Blackmail material. Protection. Why trust me?" "Because you're desperate enough to do it, and smart enough to do it right. Also," Catherine smiled thinly, "because those same men are the ones trying to destroy you. Consider it mutual benefit. And if I'm caught, then we both hang. But if you succeed, you'll have your 200 plus another 300 on delivery. Enough to save your ranch." Eliza stared at the money. Such a small pouch to hold so much weight. "When?" "Tomorrow night. The papers are hidden in a shipment of dresses bound for California. You'll travel as a widow seeking a fresh start, not far from truth. In San Francisco, you'll deliver them to Jonathan Hartwell, attorney at law, then home to your farmhand. How long?" 2 weeks, perhaps 3. 3 weeks away from Jonah. 3 weeks of lies, but 3 weeks to save everything." "I'll do it." Catherine nodded, unsurprised. "Then let's discuss details." Eliza rode home as darkness fell, the money hidden beneath her corset. She found Jonah waiting on the porch, worry etched on his face. "Where were you? I was about to ride out looking—" "I went to town. To think." The lie tasted bitter. "Jonah, I've found a way to get the money." His eyes narrowed. "How?" "My aunt in San Francisco, mother's sister." The fabrication came too easily. "She has means. If I go to her, explain our situation. You never mentioned an aunt." "We weren't close, but she's family. She'll help." Jonah stood slowly. "You're lying." Her heart stopped. "What?" "You're lying to me." He stepped closer, and she saw hurt mixing with anger in his eyes. "After everything, you're standing there lying to my face. I'm not." "Stop." His voice was quiet, which was worse than shouting. "I know you, Eliza. Know every expression, every tell. What are you really planning?" She wanted to confess, to fall into his arms and share the burden, but Catherine's warning echoed. Secrets don't keep in small towns. If Jonah knew, he'd try to stop her or worse, take her place. Does it matter? She lifted her chin. "If I can save the ranch, not like this, not with lies between us." He caught her shoulders. "Whatever you're thinking, we'll find another way." "There is no other way." The words exploded from her. "Don't you understand? We're out of options, out of time. If I can fix this—" "By selling yourself?" The accusation hit like a slap. "How dare you? That's where you went, isn't it? To the Belmore house. To borrow money. Nothing more. And what's the payment? What did you promise her? Eliza jerked away. I promised to save us. That's all that matters. No. His voice broke. You matter. We matter. If you do this thing, whatever it is, you'll destroy us anyway. Then we're destroyed either way. They stood in the gathering darkness, the chasm between them widening with each breath. Finally, Jonah spoke. If you leave, I won't be here when you return. The words cut deeper than any blade. You don't mean that. I left everything for you, waited years for you, but I won't watch you sacrifice yourself for dirt and wood. He turned toward the barn. Make your choice, Eliza, but know the cost. She watched him walk away, wanting to call him back, to promise she'd stay. Instead, she went inside to pack. That night, she lay alone in their bed, staring at the ceiling. Every board, every nail in this house held memory. Samuel building it with grim determination. Her early days as a bride, trying to make it home. The fire that nearly destroyed it. Jonah's arms around her as they claimed it together. Before dawn. She rose and dressed in her traveling clothes. She left a note on the kitchen table. I'm doing this for us. Please understand. Wait for me. I love you. E. The barn was dark when she saddled her mare. She hoped Jonah was asleep, that she could leave without another confrontation. But as she led the horse out, he emerged from the shadows. So, you're going. I have to. He approached slowly, and in the dim light she saw he hadn't slept either. Then I'm going with you. No, this is something I need to do alone. Like hell. He caught the reins. You think I'd let you ride into danger by yourself? You don't let me do anything. I choose. She tried to pull away, but his grip held firm. Jonah, please, trust me. How can I when you won't tell me the truth? They struggled over the reins, neither willing to yield. In the scuffle, the hidden pouch fell from her jacket. Gold coins spilled onto the ground, gleaming in the moonlight. Jonah went very still. Where did you get this? Catherine Belmore. What did you promise her? When she didn't answer, his face hardened. What did you sell? Nothing. I'm delivering something to San Francisco. Legal documents. That's all. Documents worth $500? Do you think I'm a fool? I think you're a man who's never had to make impossible choices. The words poured out, years of frustration behind them. You've never been property, never been told your only worth is in marriage or mourning. I'm trying to save us the only way I can, by becoming a criminal, by being brave enough to do what needs doing. They faced each other in the pre-dawn darkness, both breathing hard. Finally, Jonah released the reins. Then go. His voice was hollow. But know this, you're not saving us. You're choosing the ranch over me. That's not, it is, and maybe that's fitting. Samuel always came first anyway. The cruelty of it took her breath. How can you say that? Because it's true, even dead. He's between us. His ranch, his legacy, his widow. I was fool enough to think love could overcome that. It can. It will. When I come back, I told you, I won't be here. You don't mean that. But his face was closed, stranger cold. He gathered the scattered coins, pressed them into her hands. Safe travels, Mrs. Morrison. The formality was worse than anger. Eliza mounted her horse, tears blurring her vision. I love you. He didn't answer, just stood watching as she rode away. She looked back once at the bend in the road. He was still there, a dark figure against the lightening sky. Then the road turned, and he was gone. The journey to meet Catherine's contact stretched before her like a lifetime. With each mile, she second-guessed her choice. But what else could she do? Let them lose everything? Watch the bank auction off their dreams? She'd save the ranch, deliver the documents, and return to make things right with Jonah. He'd understand once the danger passed. He had to. But as the sunrise painted the mountains crimson, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that she'd already lost the only thing worth saving. The stagecoach to San Francisco had barely cleared the town limits when news of the fire reached Eliza, a fellow passenger, a merchant returning from Cedar Ridge, spoke casually of the tragedy. The Morrison Ranch, burned to the ground. The farmhand barely escaped with his life. Eliza's world tilted. When did this happen? The merchant, startled by her vehemence, checked his pocket watch. 2 nights past. Ma'am, terrible thing. They say it was arson. 2 nights. The night after she left. Her hands shook as she gripped the window frame. The farmhand, did he survive? So they say. Burned trying to save the livestock. Last I heard, Doc Winters was tending him. The merchant studied her with growing recognition. Say, aren't you the widow Morrison? But Eliza was already moving, pushing past surprised passengers to pound on the coach roof. Stop! Stop the coach! Ma'am, we can't just stop this coach or I'll jump! The driver, faced with a hysterical woman and the threat of scandal, pulled the team to a halt. Eliza scrambled out, carpetbag in hand, ignoring the protests behind her. Ma'am, the next coach isn't for 3 days. I'm not waiting. She pulled bills from Catherine's pouch, pressing them into the driver's hand. There, for your trouble. Then she was running back along the road, her traveling dress catching on brush, her city boots sliding on gravel. A farmer with a wagon took pity on her wild appearance and gave her a ride part way. The rest she walked, then ran, then stumbled as darkness fell. She smelled the smoke before she saw the ruins, where the house had stood. Only blackened timbers remained. The barn, too, was gone. In the moonlight, the devastation looked like something from a battlefield. Jonah! Her voice cracked across the emptiness. Jonah! No answer but the wind through charred wood. She searched frantically through the debris, terrified of finding a body. But there was nothing, no sign of him. Doc Winters, the merchant had said Doc Winters was tending him. The ride to town passed in a blur of terror and self-recrimination. She'd left him alone to face whoever had done this. If he died thinking she'd chosen the ranch over him, Dr. Winters answered his door in nightclothes, spectacles askew. Mrs. Morrison? Good Lord, what are you doing here? Jonah, where is he? Is he alive? The doctor's face gentled. He's alive. Badly burned, smoke in his lungs, but alive. Come. He led her to a back room where the scent of laudanum and burned flesh made her stomach turn. In the narrow bed lay Jonah, or what remained of him. Bandages covered his hands, his left arm, part of his face. Each breath rattled in his chest. Eliza dropped to her knees beside the bed. Oh, God. Oh, Jonah. He's been asking for you, Doc Winters said quietly. In his delirium, keep saying he has to wait. You'll come back. Tears blurred her vision as she carefully took his unbandaged hand. I'm here, my love. Jonah's eyes fluttered open, struggling to focus. Eliza. The word was barely a whisper. I'm here. I'm so sorry. I never should have left. The ranch. He tried to sit up, gasping at the pain. Shh. Don't move. She pressed him gently back. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters but you. They came, after dark. Tom Garrett, others. Each word cost him. Said, if you wouldn't sell, they'd take it anyway. Don't talk. Save your strength. But he gripped her hand with surprising force. Tried to stop them. Got the horses out. Went back for your books. A cough racked him. Your poetry books. She saw then, on the bedside table, the charred remains of the volume he'd left for her. He'd risked his life for her books, for the pressed flowers between pages, for the tangible proof of their love. You beautiful fool, she whispered, kissing his forehead. They're just things. All you had left of him? It took her a moment to understand. Not the poetry, Samuel's books, Samuel's papers. He'd tried to save her first husband's memory. No, she said fiercely. You're all I have, all I need. Do you hear me? He managed a slight nod before the laudanum pulled him under. Eliza stayed by his side, holding his hand, whispering promises and prayers. Doc Winters returned with basin and cloths. You'll want to clean up and eat something. He'll need you strong when he wakes. I'm not leaving him. Then I'll bring food here. But Mrs. Morrison, Eliza, there's something else you should know." Her heart, already battered, braced for another blow. "What?" "Sheriff Walsh was here earlier. There's talk of charges against you." "Me? I wasn't even there. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Garrett's claiming you and Jonah burned your own place for insurance money. Says you fled town to establish an alibi." The enormity of it crashed over her. Not only had they destroyed her home, they were trying to destroy her freedom too. "But that's madness. We had no insurance. Samuel never believed in it." "I know that. Most folks know that. But Garrett's got the sheriff's ear, and gold speaks louder than truth in this town." Eliza looked at Jonah's still form, at the bandages hiding what fire had done to him. Rage built in her chest, cold and clarifying. "Where's Garrett now?" "Eliza, don't do anything rash." "Where is he?" Doc Winters sighed. "Courthouse. There's an emergency town meeting about seizing your land for back taxes. Started an hour ago." She stood, smoothing her scorched traveling dress. "Watch him. If he wakes, tell him I'll be back." "Eliza." But she was already gone. The courthouse was packed, the air thick with tobacco smoke and righteous indignation. Tom Garrett stood at the podium, gesturing dramatically. "For the safety of our community, a woman who consorts with her farmhand, who burns her own property, who flees jurisdiction, who stands right here." Every head turned as Eliza strode down the aisle. Whispers rose like wind through wheat. She looked like vengeance itself, dress torn and muddy, hair wild, eyes burning with fury. "Mrs. Morrison." Garrett's smile was poisonous. "How good of you to join us. Sheriff, perhaps you should explain why you burned my home." Her voice carried to every corner. "Why you tried to murder the man who caught you at it. These are serious accusations." "Yes, they are." She turned to face the crowd, recognizing faces, some sympathetic, some hostile, most simply curious. "You want to know what kind of woman I am? I'll tell you. I'm a woman who buried her husband and tried to keep his dream alive, who worked until her hands bled rather than accept your charity or your threats." "This is hardly the place." "This is exactly the place." She wheeled on Garrett. "You came to me after Samuel died, offered to buy the ranch. When I refused, you threatened me. When I still refused, you brought the sheriff. The minister tried to shame me into selling. You looking out for a widow's welfare, looking to steal water rights worth 10 times what you offered." She pulled Catherine's documents from her bag, not the ones meant for San Francisco, but copies she demanded before leaving. Bills of sale, survey reports, letters between Mr. Garrett and certain Denver investors regarding the imminent acquisition of Morrison water rights. The crowd stirred. Water rights were life itself in this territory. "Where did you get those?" Garrett's face had gone pale. "From someone who knows the value of information." She handed the papers to Judge Patterson in the front row. "Read them, Your Honor. See how long they've been planning this? Before Samuel died, before—" She stopped, a terrible thought crystallizing. The hunting accident. Jonah bringing Samuel's body home. The immediate pressure to sell. "You killed him." The words dropped into sudden silence. "You killed my husband. That's slander. Sheriff, arrest this woman." But Sheriff Walsh was reading the papers, his expression darkening. Other men crowded around, voices rising as they recognized names, dates, implications. "Tom," Banker Harrison's voice was cold. "These documents mention my land, too. Eventual expansion opportunities. Want to explain that?" "It's nothing. Business speculation." "It's conspiracy." Eliza's voice cut through the growing tumult. "And when I wouldn't cooperate, you burned me out, nearly killed an innocent man." "Prove it," Garrett snarled. "I don't have to." She smiled then, terrible and cold. "You see, Mr. Garrett, you made one mistake. Jonah's alive, burned, suffering, but alive. And he saw you, all of you who came in the night like cowards." The room erupted, men shouting, accusations flying. In the chaos, Garrett tried to flee but found his way blocked by angry ranchers who just realized they might be next. Sheriff Walsh finally restored order with a fired shot. Enough! Tom Garrett, you're under arrest for arson and attempted murder. Anyone else involved better speak up now, or face the same. 2 men stepped forward, shamefaced. Others melted away, hoping to escape notice. As Garrett was let out in irons, he passed close to Eliza. You've won nothing. Your ranch is ash. Your man might still die. What do you have? The truth, she said simply. And each other. That's more than you'll have in prison. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Judge Patterson assured Eliza all charges against her would be dropped. The tax claim voided. Several ranchers offered help rebuilding. Even banker Harrison, shaken by how close he'd come to being Garrett's next victim, mentioned possible loans. But Eliza barely heard them. She needed to get back to Jonah. She found him awake, Doc Winters trying to keep him calm. Eliza! He struggled up despite the pain. Doc said, the meeting. Are you arrested? No. She rushed to him, careful of his bandages. No, my love. It's over. Garrett's the one arrested. We're safe. The ranch is gone. It doesn't matter. But, she silenced him with the gentlest of kisses. I was wrong. These past months, I've been trying to save the wrong thing, holding on to Samuel's dream instead of building our own. I shouldn't have made you choose. You didn't. I made my own choice, and I chose wrong. She stroked his unbandaged cheek. But I'm here now. If you'll have me, if you can forgive me. Nothing to forgive. His good hand found hers. Just don't leave again. Never. She squeezed gently. Though we may have to, there's nothing left at the ranch. There's land, our land. His eyes, though pain-dulled, held certainty. We can build again, together. You beautiful, stubborn man. Tears ran freely down her cheeks. Yes, together. Over the following days, as Jonah slowly healed, the truth emerged fully. Garrett had indeed orchestrated Samuel's death, paying a ranch hand to spook his horse at just the right moment. Jonah, suspicious of the circumstances, had stayed close to protect Eliza, never dreaming he was falling in love with her in the process. The town, shaken by how close they'd come to enabling murder and theft, rallied around the couple. Lumber appeared for rebuilding. Labor was offered freely. Even Reverend Mills, chastened by his role in the persecution, offered to perform their marriage ceremony. When you're healed, Eliza insisted as she changed Jonah's bandages. I want you standing strong beside me, not propped up like an invalid. Might be scarred. He touched the bandages on his face. Not much to look at. You were never much to look at, she teased, then grew serious. You're beautiful to me, scars and all. They're proof of your courage, your love. I'll be proud to stand beside you. 2 weeks later, Catherine Belmore visited. She swept into Doc Winters's house like a queen, ignoring the stares her presence provoked. Well, she said, studying them both, this wasn't quite how I expected our business to conclude. Eliza met her gaze steadily. I'm sorry, I know I promised. You promised to deliver documents that would protect me from men like Garrett. Catherine smiled. I'd say you've done that admirably, if unconventionally. The whole territory is talking about the corruption you exposed. She placed a familiar pouch on the bedside table. Your delivery fee, you've more than earned it. But I didn't. You did something better. You stood up publicly, used the information to protect not just yourself, but others. That took more courage than sneaking papers to San Francisco. Catherine adjusted her gloves. Besides, I hear you'll need funds for rebuilding. After she left, Eliza stared at the money. We could go somewhere else, start fresh where nobody knows our story. Do you want to? She thought about it, then shook her head. No, that land is ours. We bled for it, burned for it. I won't let them drive us away. Then we stay. Jonah pulled her close with his good arm. And build something better from the ashes. Together, she agreed, and sealed it with a kiss that promised forever. Spring came late that year. But when it arrived, it brought hope. Jonah's burns had healed enough for him to leave Doc Winters' care, though the scars would remain, a web of puckered skin along his left arm and jaw. He bore them without complaint. But Eliza caught him sometimes, studying his reflection with troubled eyes. "You're staring again," she said one morning, finding him at the wash basin. "Just wondering if you'll tire of looking at this face." She moved behind him, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "This face, the face of the man who ran into fire for me. Never." They'd taken temporary lodging at the Johansson farm while beginning the long work of rebuilding. Eric and Clara had insisted, brushing aside offers of payment. "You helped us with harvest when nobody else would," Clara said firmly. "This is neighbors being neighbors." The first task was clearing the land. What fire hadn't destroyed had to be torn down and hauled away. Eliza worked alongside Jonah, pulling charred boards, sifting through ash for anything salvageable. It was heartbreaking work, finding the twisted remains of her mother's kettle, Samuel's melted pocket watch, fragments of the life that had been. "We should write to your family," Jonah suggested one evening as they sat exhausted on the Johanssons' porch. "Let them know what's happened." Eliza shook her head. "I have no family to speak of. Parents died years ago. No siblings." She glanced at him. "What about yours?" It was something they'd never discussed in all their time together. Jonah was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Had a sister once. Mary died of fever when she was 12. Parents followed within the year, broken hearts," Doc said. He stared at the horizon. "Been alone since I was 15. "Not anymore," Eliza said softly, taking his scarred hand. "No," he agreed, squeezing gently. "Not anymore." They were married on a Thursday morning in May, in the meadow where their house would stand. Reverend Mills performed the ceremony, his earlier condemnation replaced by genuine warmth. The crowd was small but sincere. The Johanssons, Doc Winters, a few ranchers who'd come to respect their courage, even Maria Martinez, who wept through the entire ceremony. Catherine Belmore sent a wedding gift, a set of china too fine for ranch life, and a note. "For the home you'll build together, may it stand stronger than what came before." Eliza wore a simple blue dress Clara had helped her sew. Jonah stood tall despite his healing injuries, his eyes never leaving her face as they spoke their vows. "I take you as you are," Eliza said, her voice clear and strong. "Scarred and beautiful, stubborn and gentle, I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes, to build with you, to choose you every day for the rest of our lives." Jonah's voice was rougher, thick with emotion. "I've loved you through silence and separation, through fire and ruin. I promise to love you through whatever comes next, the building up and the breaking down, the plenty and the want. You are my home, Eliza, my only home." When Reverend Mills pronounced them married, when Jonah kissed her there in the spring sunshine, Eliza felt something settle in her chest. Not just love, they'd had that, but rightness, the sense of being exactly where they belonged. The celebration was modest, Clara's cake, Eric's fiddle music, children running through the meadow. As the sun set, Eliza and Jonah walked to the rise overlooking their land. "Not much of a wedding night destination," Jonah said, gesturing at the cleared ground where they'd spread blankets under the stars. "It's perfect." Eliza drew him down beside her. "This is where our bedroom will be. I want to remember this, us here, at the beginning of everything." They made love slowly, carefully mindful of his still healing skin. But there was a sweetness to it, a sense of coming home after a long journey, when they lay spent in each other's arms, watching stars wheel overhead. Jonah spoke into the darkness. "I need to tell you something. About Samuel's death." Eliza tensed. "What about it?" "That day, hunting, he'd been drinking, not stumbling drunk, but enough to make him careless. When his horse spooked, he could have kept his seat if he'd been sober." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve the whole truth, and because—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "I could have stopped him from riding out, saw him with the bottle, but I let him go." Eliza was quiet, processing this. Do you blame yourself? Sometimes, if I'd spoken up, he would have gone anyway. Samuel never listened to anyone when his mind was set. She turned to face him. It wasn't your fault. Not what happened then. Not what Garrett did. None of it was your fault. I wanted him gone? Jonah admitted. Not dead, but gone. So you could love me without shadows. Eliza kissed him gently. That's human. Jonah, that's forgivable. They held each other as the night deepened, confessions given and absolved. When dawn came, they rose together to begin the real work of building. The house went up slowly, without money for a crew. They relied on occasional help from neighbors and their own labor. Jonah's strength was still limited, frustrating him when he couldn't lift beams or work as long as before. Rest, Eliza ordered for the 100th time, finding him gray-faced with exhaustion. Can't build a house resting. Can't build one dead either. She steered him to the shade. We have time. Jonah, no one's rushing us now. But time was exactly what worried her. Their money was running low. Despite Catherine's payment and careful spending, they needed the ranch operational before winter. Needed crops in the ground, stock in the pastures. Every delay cost them. The letter from San Francisco arrived in July, delivered by a nervous postal rider who wouldn't meet their eyes. Eliza recognized the law firm's name, Jonathan Hartwell, the attorney Catherine had meant her to find, Mrs. Morrison. The letter began, though she was Mrs. Winters now. I write regarding the estate of Samuel Morrison and matters of inheritance that may significantly impact your circumstances. She read it twice before the meaning sank in. Samuel had family in California, a younger brother he'd been estranged from but who'd done well in shipping. The brother had died recently, childless, leaving his considerable fortune to his nearest kin, which by law and blood was Samuel, and by marriage and widowhood was her $20,000, she whispered. Jonah took the letter, reading carefully. This says you need to appear in person, in San Francisco. We could go together. Look at the date. You have 2 weeks to claim it, or it goes to the state. He set the letter aside. You'll have to ride hard to make it. I'm not leaving you again. For $20,000, Eliza, this solves everything. We could hire crews, buy stock, build properly. I said no. She crumpled the letter. I left once for money. Look what it cost us. Jonah smoothed the paper, studying her face. What if I came with you? You're not healed enough for that journey. Then we let it go. He tossed the letter in the fire. We have what we need. But they didn't, and both knew it. That night, as Jonah slept, Eliza retrieved the letter from the ashes, mostly intact, still readable. She folded it carefully, thinking, in the morning, she found Jonah at the well, drawing water. I've been thinking about Samuel's brother. The money's not worth, not the money, the man. Samuel never spoke of him, but they were brothers once, family. She helped him carry the bucket. Don't we owe it to Samuel to at least learn what happened? To pay respects? Jonah studied her. This isn't about Samuel. No, she admitted. It's about us, about building something lasting. But I won't go without you. And I won't let you miss this chance because I'm too weak to ride. He set the bucket down, pulling her close. So, we compromise. You go, but not alone. Take Maria Martinez. She's been wanting to visit her cousin in Sacramento. I'll work on the house, and you'll be back before I finish the roof. Jonah, trust me this time. Trust us. He kissed her forehead. We're stronger now. Strong enough to be apart for a few weeks without breaking. It took 3 days to arrange, but finally, Eliza found herself on the westbound stage with Maria, watching the landscape change from plains to mountains to valleys. Maria proved an unexpectedly good companion, full of stories and shrewd observations. That man of yours, she said one evening as they stopped at a way station. He's got old eyes, like he's seen too much, but when he looks at you, they go young again. He's been through a lot, haven't we all? Maria patted her hand. But not everyone comes through still able to love. That's rare. Mija, don't waste it. San Francisco overwhelmed Eliza. The crowds, the buildings, the sense of constant motion. The law office was intimidatingly grand, but Mr. Hartwell himself was kind, a gray-bearded man who handled the paperwork efficiently. Your brother-in-law spoke of Samuel often. He told her, regretted their estrangement. He'd have been glad to know Samuel found happiness in marriage. Eliza thought of her cold marriage bed those last months, of Jonah waiting in the shadows. But she simply nodded. They should have reconciled while they could. Indeed, life's too short for feuds. He handed her a bank draft that seemed impossibly large. There's also this personal effects William wanted Samuel to have. The box contained photographs, letters, a gold watch, pieces of a shared childhood Eliza had never known existed. She touched them gently, thinking how little she'd really known her first husband. The return journey passed in a blur of anticipation. Maria left her in Sacramento, and Eliza continued alone, pushing hard to get home. When she finally crested the ridge overlooking their valley, her heart nearly burst. The house stood proud against the sky, walls up, roof on, real glass windows gleaming. Smoke rose from a proper chimney, and there in the doorway, as if he'd been watching for her, stood Jonah. She didn't remember dismounting, didn't remember running, only that suddenly she was in his arms, both of them talking at once. The house, how did you? Neighbors helped, wanted to surprise. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. I missed you. Never leave again. Never. They stumbled inside, still clinging to each other. The house smelled of fresh lumber and possibility. Jonah had built it thoughtfully, a kitchen with eastern windows to catch morning light, a parlor with space for guests, 2 bedrooms upstairs. 2? Eliza asked, raising an eyebrow. He actually blushed. Thought maybe, someday, if we were blessed. Children. The word sat sweet on her tongue. Oh, Jonah. That night, in their new bedroom in their new house built on old land, they celebrated properly. Eliza told him about San Francisco, about Samuel's brother and the weight of carrying money that could change everything. Jonah told her about the neighbors who'd appeared unbidden to help raise walls, about his terror that she wouldn't return, about the moment he'd seen her riding home and felt his heart restart. We should put the money in the bank tomorrow, she said, drowsy and content in his arms. Make plans, buy stock, hire hands. Tomorrow, he agreed. Tonight, just this. This being the 2 of them, together, in a house built by love and stubbornness in equal measure. Outside, night sounds drifted through windows, coyotes singing, wind in the grass, the creek running strong with snowmelt. I love you, Eliza said into the darkness. I loved you first, Jonah replied, and she could hear his smile. Doesn't matter who loved first, she said, only that we love last. His arms tightened around her. Then we'd better live forever. Or at least long enough, she agreed, and kissed him into silence. The money would bring changes, prosperity, security, maybe even the family Jonah had shyly hoped for, but lying there in the darkness of their self-made home. Eliza knew they already had everything that mattered. The rest was just building on a foundation that fire couldn't burn, prejudice couldn't topple, and time could only strengthen. They'd loved first and last and everything in between, and that, she thought as sleep claimed her, was worth more than all the gold in California. A year passed like a season, full of growth and quiet miracles. The ranch prospered beyond their wildest hopes. With Samuel's inheritance wisely invested, they'd purchased prime breeding stock, hired 2 reliable hands, and expanded the wheat fields. The house, once hastily built, now boasted a proper porch and shutters that Eliza painted green to match the cottonwoods by the creek. But the greatest miracle came in autumn, when Eliza's suspicions were confirmed by Doc Winters. About 4 months along, I'd say. He packed his medical bag with a satisfied efficiency. Everything looks fine. You're strong, healthy. Should be a spring baby. Jonah, who'd been pacing outside, nearly knocked the door off its hinges rushing in. Well, is she? Are you? We're having a baby, Eliza said, and watched his face transform with wonder. He crossed to her in 2 strides, then stopped, suddenly uncertain. "Can I?" She took his hand, placed it on her still flat belly. "Your child. Our child. Our child," he repeated, and dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead against her stomach. "Hello, little one. I'm your papa. I'm going to love you so much it might break the world." Eliza ran her fingers through his hair, tears sliding down her cheeks. They'd been trying for months, each disappointment harder than the last. She'd begun to wonder if her body, like her first marriage, would remain barren. But here was proof that some ground, once thought fallow, only needed the right season to bloom. Winter came early and hard. Eliza, growing heavy with child, chafed at the restrictions her condition brought. Jonah wouldn't let her lift anything heavier than a dinner plate, wouldn't let her walk to the barn alone in case she slipped on ice. "I'm pregnant, not porcelain," she protested one morning, finding him mucking out stalls she'd planned to clean. "Humor me." He straightened, one hand going to his back. The scars still pained him in cold weather, though he tried to hide it. "I've waited too long for this family to risk it now." She softened, seeing the fear beneath his protectiveness. "We're not going anywhere. The baby and I are strong." "I know." He pulled her close, or as close as her expanding belly allowed. "But I almost lost you once to fire. Can't help watching for smoke." The snows were deep when the pains began. 2 weeks early by Eliza's count. In the middle of a blizzard that made reaching town impossible, Jonah sent one of the hands fighting through drifts to fetch Doc Winters while he stayed with Eliza, trying to remember everything he'd learned from helping with calving. "This is different from cows," Eliza gasped between contractions. "I'd hope so." His attempt at humor fell flat, both of them too scared to laugh. The labor was long, brutal. Hours of pain with no doctor in sight, the storm howling like a living thing. Jonah never left her side, letting her grip his scarred hands until her nails drew blood, wiping her face with cool cloths, whispering encouragement when she said she couldn't continue. "You're the strongest person I know," he said as another contraction seized her. "You survived, Samuel. Survived the fire. Survived the whole damn town trying to break you. This baby's got no chance against you." What if something's wrong? What if... Then we face it together, like we always do. Dawn was breaking, the storm finally exhausting itself, when their child decided to arrive. Jonah, following instinct and half-remembered instructions, helped deliver their daughter into the world. She was small but perfect, with dark hair like her father and stubborn chin like her mother, announcing her arrival with lusty cries. "A girl," Jonah breathed, cradling the tiny form with infinite care. "Eliza, we have a daughter." Eliza, exhausted but exhilarated, reached for their child. The weight of her, the reality of her, was overwhelming. "She's beautiful, like her mother, scarred like her father." Eliza traced the baby's face, noting a small birthmark on her temple. "Our little survivor." Doc Winters arrived just as they were settling the baby for her first feeding, pronounced everyone healthy, and stayed long enough to ensure no complications arose. As he prepared to leave, he paused at the bedroom door. "What'll you call her?" Eliza and Jonah exchanged glances. They'd discussed names for months, but hadn't decided. "Hope," Eliza said suddenly. "Hope Elizabeth Winters, for what she represents." "Hope," Jonah repeated, testing the weight of it. "Yes, perfect." Hope grew like prairie grass, swift and strong. By 6 months she was crawling everywhere, exploring with determined curiosity. By a year she was walking, toddling after Jonah as he worked, babbling in a language only she understood. The town, which had once shunned them, now embraced their family. The scandal of their beginning faded against the reality of their obvious happiness. Even Reverend Mills, visiting to bless the baby, admitted he'd been wrong. "God works in mysterious ways," he said, watching Hope chase chickens while her parents looked on with amused affection. "Sometimes what looks like sin is just love finding its way." But not everyone was reconciled. Tom Garrett, released from prison after serving 18 months, returned to Cedar Ridge with bitterness carved deep in his features. He kept to himself mostly, but Eliza felt his eyes whenever she went to town, cold and calculating. "He's planning something," she told Jonah one evening after encountering Garrett at the general store. "Let him plan. We've got the law on our side now." "The law didn't stop him before." Jonah set down the harness he was mending, studying her worried face. "What do you want me to do? Run him off? Give him reason to claim we're the aggressors? I want you to be careful. Both of us. Hope needs her parents." He pulled her close, Hope babbling happily between them. "Nothing's going to happen to us. We've come too far to let Tom Garrett win now." But Garrett had learned patience in prison. He waited until spring planting, when Jonah and the hands were working far fields. Waited until he knew Eliza would be alone with the baby. She was hanging washing when he appeared, moving quiet as a snake despite his size. "Mrs. Winters." He tipped his hat mockingly. "Or should I say Mrs. Morrison? Hard to keep track of your names." Eliza's hand went to the pistol she'd taken to wearing. "Get off my land." "Your land." He laughed, an ugly sound. "Built on your dead husband's bones. Tell me, did you plan it together? Or did your farmhand surprise you with murder? The only murderer here is you, proven innocent. Lack of evidence." He stepped closer, and she caught the whiskey reek. "But I know the truth. Know how you played the grieving widow while bedding his killer. Leave, now. Or what, you'll shoot me, add another murder to your tally?" "From the house," Hope began crying. Eliza's every instinct screamed to go to her child, but she couldn't turn her back on Garrett. "That's your bastard whelp?" He smiled at her flinch. "Oh, didn't like that. Truth hurts, don't it? The only bastard here is you." His face went red. "Watch your tongue, woman. Your man's not here to protect you now." "I don't need protection." She drew the pistol, pleased to see him step back. "I'm giving you one chance to leave. Use it. You won't shoot. Don't have it in you." Eliza cocked the hammer. "I've burned for this land, bled for it, birthed on it. You think I won't kill for it?" They stood frozen, measuring each other. Hope's cries grew louder, more distressed. "Finally!" Garrett spat at her feet. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." The voice came from behind him. Jonah, rifle trained steady despite the fury in his eyes. Behind him, the Johansson brothers and their hired hands spread out, all armed. "You're done here. Garrett." "Jonah." Eliza's voice broke with relief. "Saw him riding this way. Figured he wasn't coming for tea." Jonah never lowered the rifle. "Boys here agree it's time, mister. Garrett found somewhere else to be. Permanently. You can't run me out of town. I've got rights. So did Samuel Morrison." Eric Johansson spoke up, surprising everyone. "I've kept quiet too long, but prison loosened your tongue. Tom, you bragged about that hunting accident to your cellmate, who happens to be my wife's cousin." Garrett went white. "That's hearsay. Maybe, but added to what folks already know. Might be enough for a new trial. This time for murder." Eric smiled coldly. "Or you could leave tonight. Your choice." Faced with united opposition, Garrett crumbled. He left that evening, riding east toward territories where his name meant nothing. Eliza stood on her porch, Hope in her arms, watching him disappear. "Think he'll come back?" she asked Jonah. "No, bullies like him need easy targets. We're not easy anymore." That night, after Hope was asleep, they stood together in the room they'd added, a nursery painted with Clara Johansson's help, filled with toys Jonah carved during winter evenings. "I was terrified today," Eliza admitted. "When he threatened us, threatened Hope. But you stood firm, defended what's ours." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Have I told you today that you're magnificent?" "Only twice. Shameful neglect. You're magnificent, Mrs. Winters." She turned in his arms. "We're safe now? Truly. As safe as anyone can be in this world." He kissed her softly. "We've got good neighbors, good land, each other. What more do we need?" "Time," she said. "Years and years of ordinary days. Hope learning to ride, maybe brothers or sisters for her. Harvests and plantings and Sunday dinners. Sounds like heaven. Sounds like life. She pressed close to him. The life we fought for. Spring melted into summer. Summer ripened to fall. Hope grew sturdy and bright, toddling after barn cats and demanding up. Whenever Jonah appeared, the ranch prospered, their reputation as fair employers drawing the best workers. Even Samuel's grave seemed peaceful now, the headstone weathered but standing, wildflowers growing around it that Eliza no longer felt guilty for tending. On their third wedding anniversary, Jonah presented Eliza with a gift, papers making her full partner in the ranch, not just inheritor of a husband's property. "It's yours by right," he said as she stared at the documents. "Your sweat built this as much as mine." "Ours," she corrected, signing her name with flourish. "Everything is ours." That evening, as they sat watching sunset paint the mountains gold, hope playing at their feet, Eliza felt the last knot of old pain finally loosen. The path here had been brutal, through death and judgment, fire and fear. But every scar had led to this moment, her daughter's laughter, her husband's hand in hers, their land spreading green and golden to the horizon. "What are you thinking?" Jonah asked, catching her contemplative mood. "That I wouldn't change anything. Not the pain, not the struggle. It all led here. Even Samuel. Especially Samuel. He brought me west, gave me courage I didn't know I had, in his way. He led me to you." Jonah squeezed her hand. Think he'd approve? Eliza considered it, remembering her first husband's rigid pride, his distance, but also his dreams of building something lasting. "I think he'd understand that love isn't about possession. It's about choosing to build together, even when the world tries to tear you down. Especially then," Jonah agreed. Hope toddled over, arms raised. "Up, Papa, up!" Jonah scooped her high, making her squeal with delight. Watching them, Eliza touched her belly where new life quickened. Another miracle. Another chance to expand their small, fierce circle of love. "What is it?" Jonah asked, catching her secret smile. "Tell you tonight," she promised. "When Hope's asleep." He grinned, already guessing. Another baby. Maybe. She laughed at his joy. "Probably, yes." "Eliza Winters, you magnificent woman." He kissed her soundly while Hope clapped between them. "How do you keep making me happier than I knew was possible?" "Practice," she said. "And stubbornness, and love. Love most of all." He agreed. As stars began appearing in the darkening sky, they made their way inside their hard-won home. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, weather and markets, the endless work of ranching. But tonight there was warmth and light, a child's bedtime stories, and the quiet celebration of new life beginning. In the house that fire couldn't destroy, that prejudice couldn't topple, that love had built board by board, the Winters family faced their future together. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thank you for listening to this Wild West love story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale. Are you listening during your commute? Relaxing at home? Or perhaps on a long drive? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about Eliza and Jonah's journey in the comments below. Your feedback means the world to us, and I can't wait to hear what touched your heart in this story of love conquering all odds.